Chapter 13. Robert Langdon felt a swell of panic as he stood at the apartment window, eyes riveted on the hotel across the street. The spike-haired woman had just entered, but Langdon could not fathom how she had gotten the address. Adrenaline coursed through his system, disjointing his thought process once again. My own government sent someone to kill me. Sienna looked equally astounded. Robert, that means the original attempt on your life at the hospital also was sanctioned by your government. She got up and double-checked the lock on the apartment door. If the US consulate has permission to kill you. She didn't finish the thought, but she didn't have to. The implications were terrifying. What the hell do they think I did? Why is my own government hunting me? Once again, Langdon heard the two words he had apparently been mumbling when he staggered into the hospital. Very sorry, very sorry. You're not safe here, Sienna said. We're not safe here. She motioned across the street. That woman saw us flee the hospital together, and I'm betting your government and the police are already trying to track me down. My apartment is a sublet in someone else's name, but they'll find me eventually. She turned her attention to the biotube on the table. You need to open that, right now. Langdon eyed the titanium device, seeing only the biohazard symbol. Whatever's inside that tube, Sienna said, probably has an ID code, an agency sticker, a phone number, something. You need information. I need information. Your government killed my friend. The pain in Sienna's voice shook Langdon from his thoughts, and he nodded, knowing she was correct. Yes, I'm very sorry. Langdon cringed, hearing those words again. He turned to the canister on the table, wondering what answers might be hidden inside. It could be incredibly dangerous to open this. Sienna thought for a moment. Whatever's inside will be exceptionally well contained, probably in a shatterproof plexiglass test tube. This biotube is just an outer shell to provide additional security during transport. Langdon looked out the window at the black motorcycle parked in front of the hotel. The woman had not yet come out, but she would soon figure out that Langdon was not there. He wondered what her next move would be, and how long it would take before she was pounding on the apartment door. Langdon made up his mind. He lifted the titanium tube and reluctantly placed his thumb on the biometric pad. After a moment the canister pinged and then clicked loudly. Before the tube could lock itself again, Langdon twisted the two halves against each other in opposite directions. After a quarter turn, the canister pinged a second time, and Langdon knew he was committed. Langdon's hands felt sweaty as he continued unscrewing the tube. The two halves turned smoothly on perfectly machined threads. He kept twisting, feeling as if he were about to open a precious Russian nesting doll, except that he had no idea what might fall out. After 5 turns, the two halves released. With a deep breath, Langdon gently pulled them apart. The gap between the halves widened, and a foam rubber interior slid out. Langdon laid it on the table. The protective padding vaguely resembled an elongated Nerf football. Here goes nothing. Langdon gently folded back the top of the protective foam, finally revealing the object nestled inside. Sienna stared down at the contents and cocked her head, looking puzzled. Definitely not what I expected. Langdon had anticipated some kind of futuristic-looking vial, but the content of the biotube was anything but modern. The ornately carved object appeared to be made of ivory and was approximately the size of a roll of lifesavers. It looks old, Sienna whispered. Some kind of cylinder seal, Langdon told her, finally permitting himself to exhale. Invented by the Sumerians in 3500 BC, cylinder seals were the precursors to the intaglio form of printmaking. Carved with decorative images, a seal contained a hollow shaft, through which an axle pin was inserted so the carved drum could be rolled like a modern paint roller across wet clay or terracotta, imprint, a recurring band of symbols, images, or text. This particular seal, Langdon guessed, was undoubtedly quite rare and valuable, and yet he still couldn't imagine why it would be locked in a titanium canister like some kind of bioweapon. As Langdon delicately turned the seal in his fingers, he realized that this one bore an especially gruesome carving, a 3-headed, horned Satan who was in the process of eating 3 different men at once, one man in each of his 3 mouths. Pleasant. Langdon's eyes moved to 7 letters carved beneath the devil. The ornate calligraphy was written in mirror image, as was all text on imprinting rollers, but Langdon had no trouble reading the letters, Saligia. Sienna squinted at the text, reading it aloud. Saligia. Langdon nodded, feeling a chill to hear the words spoken aloud. It's a Latin mnemonic invented by the Vatican in the Middle Ages to remind Christians of the 7 deadly sins. Saligia is an acronym for Superbia, Avaritia, Luxuria, Invidia, Gula, Ira, and Acedia. Sienna frowned. Pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. Langdon was impressed. "You know Latin. I grew up Catholic. I know sin." Langdon managed a smile as he returned his gaze to the seal, wondering again why it had been locked in a biotube as if it were dangerous. "I thought it was ivory," Sienna said. "But it's bone." She slid the artifact into the sunlight and pointed to the lines on it. Ivory forms in a diamond-shaped cross-hatching with translucent striations. Bones form with these parallel striations and darkened pitting. Langdon gently picked up the seal and examined the carvings more closely. The original Sumerian seals had been carved with rudimentary figures in cuneiform. This seal, however, was much more elaborately carved. Medieval, Langdon guessed. Furthermore, the embellishments suggested an unsettling connection with his hallucinations. Sienna eyed him with concern. "What is it?" "Recurring theme," Langdon said grimly, and motioned to one of the carvings on the seal. "See this 3-headed, man-eating Satan. It's a common image from the Middle Ages, an icon associated with the Black Death. The 3 gnashing mouths are symbolic of how efficiently the plague ate through the population." Sienna glanced uneasily at the biohazard symbol on the tube. Allusions to the plague seemed to be occurring with more frequency this morning than Langdon cared to admit, and so it was with reluctance that he acknowledged a further connection. Saligia is representative of the collective sins of mankind, which, according to medieval religious indoctrination, was the reason God punished the world with the Black Death, Sienna said, completing his thought. "Yes." Langdon paused, momentarily losing his train of thought. He had just noticed something about the cylinder that struck him as odd. Normally, a person could peer through a cylinder seal's hollow center, as if through a section of empty pipe, but in this case, the shaft was blocked. "There's something inserted inside this bone." The end caught the light and shimmered. "There's something inside," Langdon said. "And it looks like it's made of glass." He flipped the cylinder upside down to check the other end, and as he did so, a tiny object rattled inside, tumbling from one end of the bone to the other, like a ball bearing in a tube. Langdon froze, and he heard Sienna let out a soft gasp beside him. "What the hell was that? Did you hear that sound?" Sienna whispered. Langdon nodded and carefully peered into the end of the canister. The opening appears to be blocked by something made of metal. "The cap of a test tube, maybe." Sienna backed away. "Does it look broken?" "I don't think so." He carefully tipped the bone again to re-examine the glass end, and the rattling sound recurred. An instant later, the glass in the cylinder did something wholly unexpected. It began to glow. Sienna's eyes opened wide. "Robert, stop. Don't move."